Alright, so we're going to start off talking about the basic shapes and proportions of the hand. So what we're going to go ahead and draw here at this point is the hand from a closed position. And we get this kind of an almond shape. Alright, then we'll take this distance and split it roughly in half. And we're using the back of the hand to check the proportions. Just ask yourself, or see if you know why we would use the back of the hand instead of the front. I'll drop that down just a bit. And the answer is that that's where the skeletal landmarks are more clear. And skeletal landmarks are pretty much what you would think they are. They're places where the bones are closer to the surface, less covered by muscle. And so we can use those because, obviously as we're moving, muscles will change shape, but bones, on a good day, bones shouldn't change shape and length. So we use the bones to help us with proportion. Alright, so there's our... Oh, and also notice that even though this is a halfway point, there is a bit of an arc to it, because of course all of our fingers aren't the same length. Alright. Do something a little darker here. Okay. Alright, so we have our halfway point here, and then we're going to take this distance of the middle finger and divide that roughly in half, and that will give us our first knuckle, or I'm sorry, second knuckle if we count this one as our first. And then we're going to divide this in half again, and that'll give us the final knuckle on the phalange, and we'll divide that roughly in half again, and that'll give us the placement of the fingernail. Alright, so then what we do next is we're going to go ahead and, here, let me go ahead and clean up that shape a little bit. Okay, and then drawing the fingers, and I handle the fingers very much the same way I would handle the arms and the legs, and that is kind of as a triangle when they're flat, and then when we're adding form to them, more of a cone shape. So basically a little thicker, closer to the body of the hand, and then thinner as we move out towards the tip of the finger. Alright, so now from here we're going to establish the ring and the index finger by drawing a line across the base of the nail here. Now, generally, we have one finger that's longer than the other. Either the index finger is longer or the ring finger is longer. But for the sake of simplification, we'll just go ahead and make them the same length. But just so long as you understand that that's not necessarily what you're going to see when you're drawing from life. Alright, and then we do the same thing here. We go from the tip of the finger, the base of the finger. And we're going to divide that in half-ish. And then again. And again. And the knuckles are generally going to be a little bit wider, and you don't necessarily want to get too carried away with making them wider because they really start to stick out or bulge out. But again, it kind of depends again on your subject or if you're trying to, what you're trying to communicate. All right. So now we're going to do the pinky is a little bit different in the sense that it drops down. It's the relationship is more drastic from more drastic than these three middle fingers. And so I'm going to go down to that first, or I'm sorry, last knuckle, I should say, depending on which way you're going. And again, we'll divide that in half, and so on. All right, and that gives us our basic lay-in for the proportions of the hand. All right, now let's go ahead and add the thumb. And so again, we'll take this and divide it in half. And one of the things to keep in mind with proportions, with these general proportions, is that they're not always true, okay? But where they serve a purpose is they get us looking. And so whether these generic or general proportions apply to your subject or not, at least you're checking. And then if it turns out, oh, the fingers are longer or shorter, then you'll see it. Whereas if you're not measuring or don't have a sense of these measurements at all, you might miss it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create this or capture this flow here, and I'm going to bring this down like so, and then I'm going to do that same thing here and just kind of carry that arc down like that. And then that will help me get the proportions of the thumb, the rest of the thumb. Now there are several muscles in between the thumb and the metacarpal bones. And so how this breaks down is, well, let me just, we'll just grab a different color here, I think. Oh, what the heck, we'll just go with this. All right, so we have a grouping of bones, the carpal bones here, which are the transition from the wrist to the hand. And then the back of the hand, or the body of the hand, is made up of, and we'll go into this in more detail when we start talking about anatomy, but the body of the hand is made up of carpal bones. So we have the carpal bones and the metacarpal bones, and then the phalanges. Those are the bones that make up the fingers, the phalanges. All right, and so where I was going with this is that we have in between this metacarpal bone and this metacarpal bone several different muscles, what those do is they help us rotate. They're combined with muscles. You can see some of the tendons here, pollicis tendons, that start down here on the forearm a little bit lower. But what I'm talking about here are these muscles that when we expand our thumb, this becomes somewhat flat, and then when we close the thumb up, they're contracting, they get a little more solid and bulge out, and so you get that strong shape there. Sorry, fighting with my pencil a little bit. Starts to look a little bit furry. All right, so now we're just about finished with the proportions, but we need to add the wrist. And so how do we find the wrist? If we drop a line straight down between the ring and the pinky finger, and then along this side here, between the outside of the hand, or between the body of the hand and the thumb, that helps us get the width of the wrist. And then I know I indicated the bones just kind of lightly there, but that's not really usually what we see from the back of the hand, because there's tendons that pull over the top of that. And again, when we talk about anatomy, we'll get into that a little bit more. But a lot of these tendons actually run from the forearm, and then once they cross the wrist become tendons, which is great because then you have those larger muscles of the forearm. So you get that extra muscle, and then they become tendons, which are they're thin and they can help articulate the fingers. So you have a lot of muscle, but then also that fine articulation as well.